Okay, so one of the requirements for your midterm project is to analyze the economic data for your country. Now, each one of your countries can be found in the OECD website. So I want to direct you to this website first where we'll gather all of our data. So when you get to the home page, it should look very much like this, where it's presenting some different news up at the top and a lot of different resources for you, which could be extremely helpful as you are writing your midterm and final analyses. What I want to draw your attention to is the Data tab at the top of this website. When we click on the Data tab, it's going to bring us to our resource that we're going to use to compare and analyze the data for your country. Now, there's always going to be a featured chart on the opening page. So this one's on education spending, which they have done in a bar graph of types and a map graph. Now, for our analysis, we're going to be working with three specific variables. The first is gross domestic product, or GDP. The second will be inflation, and our third will be the unemployment variable. Now, there are many ways to navigate this website. You can browse by topic, and when you click on this tab, you're going to see different areas of data that is compiled by the OECD. Now, again, this is a great resource for you as you're researching your country and you're discussing and analyzing its current economic state. You can also browse by country directly, and you can click on your country and go to their website. Now, I'm going to use the United States as an example since none of you are using the United States for your country project. When you click on a specific country, it's going to bring you up to a page that highlights specific indicators. So here I can see the population, education, and so forth. Now, you can go through and click on these and get more information. Like if I wanted more information about the population, I could click on it. It's going to initially bring up a map for me so I can visually see how the population in the United States compares to other places like India or even China. I can also look at my data in a table form, which is going to give me the exact data for each of the countries. And I can scroll down to get all of the countries in the OECD. And lastly, I have the ability to look at a chart of the data, which is going to show me how the United States compares with other countries in the OECD. Over on the left-hand side, you'll see different indicators under population that are related. So right now I'm looking at population, but if I wanted to look at working age population specifically, I could look at the chart, map, and table for that data, or I can look at young population, elderly population, and fertility rates, whatever it is that you are looking for to help you while you're supporting your analysis. Now, if you come up to an indicator that you're not completely sure what it's modeling, if you scroll down on that page, it's going to give you a definition. Now, this is the definition that the OECD uses to standardize it across all countries. It's also going to give you some related publications that you can use and additional information. Now, with each one of our data sources, we're going to have different options down here at the bottom, and they will look the same across all of our indicators. So I'm going to take you to our first indicator of study, which is our gross domestic product, or GDP. So again, I can go back to my country website. Well, too far. And I will notice that GDP happens to be one of the selected indicators on the front page. So I can click on it and go directly to that data. But we'll also be studying inflation, which is not one of the selected indicators for my country. So if it happens that one of your indicators isn't located on your homepage, the best way for you to find it is to use this search box on the website. So I'm going to type in GDP just to show you how this search bar works. So as I type in GDP, I'm going to get a long list of results. I'm going to click on this first one, which gives me gross domestic product by itself. If you see something that says forecast, that's a prediction. So it's going to take past values of gross domestic product and it's going to forecast what the future is going to look like for a country. At this point, I just want to do an analysis of the past data and I don't want to look at what's going to happen yet into the future. So let's click on this GDP tab where I get another chart that looks very similar to my previous data. Again, I have my various indicators over to the left. So I have my GDP, real and nominal outline for us. There's that forecast or prediction. I can look at quarterly GDP, investments, and so forth. Now, when you get to this first chart, it looks really, really busy. But that's okay because as you use your mouse, you can scroll over each line and it's going to give you more information to help you understand. So this first line happens to be Luxembourg. And you can see when my mouse is on it that it's going to highlight all of the data points along the graph. I can do that for any line on my chart. The line that is indicated in red is my selected country, which happens to be the United States. As I go through the chart, you'll notice that there's a lot of data to look at. This makes things a little bit complicated. So one thing I want you to be able to do is be able to isolate your country's data without having all of the other OECD data in the background. So to do this, you're going to scroll down below your chart and you're going to click where it says highlighted countries. Well, notice that my country, the United States, is highlighted already. If your country is not highlighted, you're going to come over here to find a country. You can type your country in or you can pick it from the list. Once you have your country highlighted, you want to go over to the background. Right now, all of the countries are being modeled in the background of my data, which is what is making it very busy. So I'm going to select none instead of all. And then when I close this out, you'll notice that now I'm only seeing the data for the United States and I don't have so much going on in the background. So one piece of data to look at is the United States total GDP over time. Notice that this graph starts in 1980 and it climbs, for the most part, with a little bit of dips, all the way to 2014, the last reported data. Now, currently the data is being reported in total values of US dollars per capita. Now, per capita, as a reminder, is per person. What this allows us to do is ignore population and its effect on GDP. You also see that it's being reported yearly or annually, and this scroll bar down at the bottom is giving me the dates that it's displaying. I have the ability to move this back and forth, which is going to be helpful. In your project, you're going to want to display the last 20 years of data. So 2014 all the way back to 1994. Now, this is only one indicator of your country's performance. The one we're going to be looking at specifically for this assignment is quarterly GDP. So we're going to click on the button that gives us the quarterly GDP data. Again, you notice that it is filled with data from all the OECD countries. So what I want to do is I want to, again, highlight those countries. I want to make sure my country is currently highlighted, and I want to select the background as none. Now what I notice is that my GDP data looks very different than it did in the first graph. First off, this is quarterly data, so it's going to be reported 4 times a year. And secondly, this data is reporting our percentage change. Our percentage change tells us how much it's different from the period before. Percentage changes give us a lot of information about a country's economic state. So as the GDP is increasing, for better indication, it's anytime GDP growth is above this 0% line. That means that our country is growing and doing better than it did previously. Now, you'll notice that most of my data points are above my 0% line. I do have a couple down here that will fall below 0%, and those are really important ones for us to take a look at in our analysis. Now, for your graph, I want you to make sure that you are on total And I also want you to make sure that you're on percentage change from the previous period. Make sure that your graph is modeling the past 20 years. So you're going to scroll it back all the way to 1994. And now you're ready to add this to your assignment. Now there are a couple of different ways to add it to your assignment. The first is to capture it with a screenshot. To do a screenshot on a Mac, like the computer I'm on right now, I'm going to hold down Command-Shift-4. This is going to give me a tool that's going to help me select the data on the website. So I'm just going to hold down my mouse, drag it across my graph, and now I've taken that graph and I've copied it to my desktop. If you're on a Windows machine, you're going to use the snipping tool that can be found in your accessories. Now, I personally love the snipping tool of Windows machines because once you select the area that represents the graph, you can simply copy and paste directly into the assignment. For Mac users, to put this into the assignment, we're going to have to take the graph from your desktop and then insert it into the assignment. And I'll show you how to do that in just a moment. Now, you're going to also be pulling the data in addition to the table. So you can access the data in a table format directly on the website, and you can see all of the data reported quarterly for the past 20 years. And you can also download the data. I highly suggest downloading the data. It makes it into a nice Excel spreadsheet for you, which makes it much easier to put it into your assignment. If you have it in the form that they have it on the website, it's a very long horizontal list, which makes it very difficult to put it in a Word document. So I'm going to click on download. I'm going to click selected data only. So I only pick the data for the past 20 years that I've indicated. And that's going to download directly onto my computer. Once that has downloaded, I'm going to click on it and it'll open up for me in my Excel spreadsheet. Now, what I have here are some different variables along the top now. This first data point is just telling me that this is recorded in the United States, and the second tells me that the indicator is quarterly GDP, or QGDP. It's looking at total values and measured as a percentage change. Now, the frequency is going to be expressed as a Q, which indicates quarterly, and in this column, I have all of my time periods. So my quarters from 1994 all the way through 2014. Oh, actually 2015, even better. So at the last column, it's going to give me the value. And remember that this value does tell me the percentage change from quarter to quarter, and it doesn't tell me the overall amount of GDP. So I can take this data table and I can select everything. Copy and paste it directly into a Word document. So this is going to save you a lot of time rather than taking the data from the website and trying to format it from there. I'm going to go back to my website, and I want to show you the other two variables that we're going to look at for our studies. So I'm going to next look at inflation data for the United States. So I'm going to again click on my search box and I'm going to type in inflation. Now, inflation is measured using the Consumer Price Index, or the CPI. So I want to make sure that I pull the CPI data from the OECD website. I'm going to click on this, and I'm back to that crazy looking chart. So first step I always like to do is to clean it up to make it easier to read. To do that, I'm going to, again, take my background and put it to none, and only leave my selected country, the United States. So the Consumer Price Index is measuring how consumer goods and services are changing in price over time. It's also typically it's typically reported monthly rather than quarterly. So you'll notice that there's going to be additional data points in this data set. Now, I do want to take my bar and I want to move it back 20 years. And when I say 20 years, it can be approximately. So you'll notice in the last one I went to 1994, and that's because some data is reported only to the end of 2014, while some, like this and the quarterly GDP, is reported all the way to the end of 2015. So if you're around 20, 21 years, you're doing just fine. It doesn't need to be an exact number for us to be able to do our analysis. So now I have my chart of inflation data over the past 20 years or so. I can screenshot this and add it to my assignment. I can also download the data, which you'll need to do. Select that data and add that to your assignment just like we did with GDP. Now the last data point that you need to search for your country is unemployment. Now we're going to use this variable called the harmonized unemployment rate. So when you click on this, it's going to look very similar to those that we've worked with previously, but you're going to clean it up so that way your country is alone on the graph. Again, make sure that you're modeling 20 years or so of data. And now I can see how the unemployment rate has changed over time. And oh my goodness, can you see this incredible jump in GDP in such a short period of time? In just 1 year, it has skyrocketed. These are really important things to notice on your graphs as well. If you can kind of notice some abnormalities about the data, it'll help you when you're doing your analysis. So I'm going to screenshot my chart. I'm going to download my data, add both of those to my assignment. Now the last part of the assignment that you're going to work on is the follow-up. And with this, you're going to go back to the crazy looking charts. So what I would like for you to do in the follow-up is click where it says highlighted countries. I want you to get rid of your country for now, but I want you to look at all of the countries together. Again, this is going to make the graphs look a little bit crazy. But what's cool is now you'll be able to see how all of these countries compare to each other. And look at how cool this is as I scroll down slowly through my data. For each one of the variables that you've studied for your country, I want you to look at how all of the countries in the OECD have compared over the same period of time, those 20 years. So what you're going to do is you're going to start over here on the left-hand side of your graph around 1994 and 1995, and you're going to tell me what two countries have the highest and the lowest rates to begin the analysis. Then I want you to come over here and tell me which two countries have the highest rates and lowest rates at the end of the analysis. Sometimes it's going to be the same country on both ends with the highest in rates, and some countries are going to go from high to low and low to high. And I just want you to see how these countries can change so drastically over a short period of time, like 20 years. So that is going to be the first part of your midterm project, is just doing a little bit of data analysis to give you a head start when you're doing your midterm paper. If you have any questions or if you need any assistance, I'm here to help you.